there, welcome back to Fingerstyle Ukulele with me, Stead. In today's video, I'm going to look at a couple of really exciting techniques that I'm super excited to share with you. So far in our fingerstyle journey, we've mostly been putting the chords in our chord melody on the strong beats or the on beats in a piece of music. So often we'll put a chord on the first beat of a measure. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, for instance. Now this technique that we're going to do today, we're going to put chords on every single offbeat. What do I mean by that? Well, if we count our beats as 1, 2, 3, 4, you can think of your offbeats as the ands in between, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This technique creates a really exciting, real kind of driving upbeat sound, which is super exciting, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. The reason that we're looking at this technique in this video with I'll Fly Away, one of the pieces not in the book, the sheets are still available to download, don't worry, is because two of the pieces that we're going to look at later in the book are going to use this technique, and this is a really nice accessible way to approach it, to teach you the technique first. We're also going to look at a really cool clawhammer up-picking technique which adds even more texture to proceedings, which really kind of like ups the drama and intensity even further. And again, I'll go into a lot of detail, I'll break that down and teach that for you. So loads of exciting things to learn today. Let's get cracking. Here's a little demo version of the piece so you can have a listen how it sounds with all the bells and whistles, and later on you can use this as a play along to play with as well. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now don't panic if you're watching that the first time you think, what, I'll never be able to do that. You've got this, you've got this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break things down in a really clear and formulaic way. So with lots and lots of practice, just going to take things slowly, you'll definitely be able to do this, I absolutely promise. So be patient with yourself, take things slow. So let's have a look at what's happening with the arrangement first of all, which is really important, talking about that kind of offbeat strumming and what's happening. So really, in the first part of the arrangement, before I put the kind of clawhammer essence in, we have two main things happening. We have a melody which goes largely down the A string, occasionally onto the E string, and then we have these offbeat chords. So let's take a look at the melody first. If you have a look at the tablature or the sheet music, tablature is probably the easiest way. Think of the melody in this first section as every other note. So we have an E at the 7th fret, followed by a C down here, a G, and a C. So the opening melody. Now what I want you to do is I want you to try picking that with one of your fingers coming upwards. That's going to be really important for the whole technique later on. I like to use either the ring finger of my picking hand or my index finger, but you can use whichever feels comfortable to you. You're going to pick up on those notes. Now, because we've also got a really large stretch coming from the 7th fret down to the 3rd fret, kind of think smart about which fingers you use. So let's use our little finger or pinky at 7. Come back to our index finger, first finger on the 3rd fret. I like to put my 2nd finger up here on this G note, 3rd fret of the E string. And then we go back to that 3rd note. Okay, so that's our opening melody. Now basically all we need to do is put an essence of chord in between those melody notes on the offbeat. Now a quirk of the C chord, because the C major chord is made up of the notes C, E and G, and your top 3 strings of your ukulele open are C, E and G. To play the C chord that goes in between those melody notes, quite simply we just have to strum down. So in effect this is what's happening all the way through the song, is we're picking a melody note using our nails coming up, then we're using our nails and very lightly but quickly strumming down immediately afterwards. So we get this 1 and, okay, 1 and. Now we do that on every single note. So we have that 7 high E in a strum, same at 3. Now when I play this next chord, I'm going to put my 2nd finger down on the 3rd fret of the E string, and I'm still going to keep my 1st finger down and strum. Technically that gives us a C5 chord. If you're into your music theory, the reason it's called a C5 chord is it's only made of 2 notes, a C and a note that's 5 above that, hence the 5, a G, C and a G. So by putting those 2 fingers down and strumming, we get a lovely C5 chord. Normally arrangers wouldn't notate that, they just call it a C, because in effect it's like a C with a G melody note. So if I put that together slowly, it will sound like this. Note, chord, note, chord, note, chord, note, chord. Not too bad, right? Now when I speed that up, that's exactly the technique I'm using, just note, chord. What you need to do is practice it slowly. See, I missed a strum there, so even I can go wrong sometimes. Practice it slowly and then gradually increase the tempo. Want you to notice how light and fast I'm making those strums. I'm barely touching the strings, they're very, very light. And in effect that gives you your opening section and the technique that we're going to use for the whole song. Now it's worth just stopping here just for a second to have a look at the time signature of this piece here. We have a 2/4 time signature, often known as a march. You'll see it written next to the treble clef. Now most pieces that we play on the ukulele tend to be in 4/4 common time or 3/4 waltz time. There are plenty of other time signatures, but those are the most common. So waltz time 3 beats in a bar, common time 4 beats in a bar. Here we only have 2 beats in a bar, and that just gives it a very kind of straightforward march feel. And we capture the essence of that just by counting 2 in every measure, with the ands importantly. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So it's quite simple to count. As long as you count your ands, just count 1 and 2 and every measure. And you'll notice 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. It does give it that march kind of feel. This form of music, a lot of kind of ragtime and early jazz came out of the New Orleans marching bands that were around at that time. It's kind of a blending of that with the blues, and we want to capture that essence. The difference, I guess, with 4/4 timing is 4/4 you have that strong pulse at the start of a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whereas with this form of 2/4 music, we have those 2 strong pulses, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and in every measure. And it just kind of drives the music forward. You can imagine it as a march. So just something to bear in mind as we count. We're going to count 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So what's happening here is we're kind of doing something clever, aren't we? We're tricking the ear to thinking there's two instruments playing at once. An accompaniment instrument playing offbeat chords, and another instrument, a solo instrument, playing the melody. And when we put those together, we get this lovely form of playing. Now, the next few measures take things up another notch, and this is where things get really, really interesting. Sometimes a melody will syncopate, and sometimes it will play on every off and on beat. And that's what happens here. So the melody, instead of having the offbeats in between, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we have the notes changing on the offbeats as well. So we have no, no, no notes, 1 and 2 and. And it kind of makes things super exciting for the listener to hear, because they hear that melody carrying on, but they still hear that strum going. Now all we need to do is strum down now on every other beat, just like we were before, but notice we're changing our fingers for the melody note as we do so. So we pick that 7th fret up, we go to the 5th and strum down, we pick up on the 7th, and we go to the 8th and strum down. So we're still doing note, chord, note, chord, note, chord, note, chord. It just happens that the melody is changing on the offbeats as well as the onbeats, which is really, really exciting to the ear. Notice that at the end of that we go back to our original way of playing. Isn't that fantastic? So really slowly, 7, 5 strum, 7 up, 8 strum, back to 7, strum, 5 strum. Fantastic. Take that really slowly, play that a few times, get really, really comfortable. And perhaps let's put that together with the opening 2 measures. Let's go really nice and slow. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Did you notice in that last section, incidentally, that I kept my index finger where it was? All about economy of movement, so try that as you hit the next few notes. Now at this point in the music we have something that happens in a lot of old time and bluegrass music. We have the 5 chords coming in, but it only comes in for 1 beat very quickly at the end of the measure. So you notice we're up here at the 7th fret for this high E note and we're strumming. Then we go down to the 5th fret, play a quick G7, that's the 5 chord. C, D, E, F, G, that's why we call it the 5 chord. And then we resolve back to that C5 chord. So notice that G7 chord only comes in for that 1 beat, in fact half a beat really, and then we go back to our C chord. Now we kind of need to be prepared for that with our fingering. So after you've hit all those 7s, what I want you to do is use your 3rd finger to pick the 5th fret, that high D note of the A string. That allows you then to pull that finger back to the 2nd fret, place your G7 chord down on top of it, and then move up to this C5 chord. Okay, so in slow motion that will look something like this. 7, 7, 7, 5 with the 3rd, swoop back, G7, and then we resolve it to the C5. And at a slightly higher tempo, it will look and sound something like this. 1 and 2, and. And again, with all of this, practice it super slow. And then when you feel comfortable, bring it back up to tempo. So hopefully now you're really getting to grips with how this is working, with those chords coming down on every offbeat, the melody mostly being on every strong beat, occasionally going to the offbeat as well. Now we have my favourite part of the tune now, where we go right up the fretboard to a high G at the 10th fret of your A string. This is like the chorus, if you like. I'll fly away, oh glory. Can't remember quite how it goes with the lyrics. But we're going to take our little finger way up to this 10th fret, and we're going to play that only once with the down strum. Immediately we're going to follow it by putting our first index finger down at the 7th fret. Now notice here it's one of those sections where the melody is changing on the offbeat as well as the onbeat. So we have this 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 8. Now notice again I'm using 3 fingers, and I tend to keep the index finger once it goes down on that 7th fret. 10, 7, 8. I can leave both of those there. 10, 7, 8. Okay, so let's just practice that together. 1 and 2 and 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 8. Yeah, brilliant. Then we carry on with a similar way of doing it, but we kind of travel down the fretboard. So we have 10 again, 7, then we go back to a D note, 5th fret of the A string. I like to use my index finger there, first finger. Pull that back to the 3rd fret. Okay. So if I put that together with the bit we're just doing from 10, the start of the next section, those double bar lines. 1 and 2 and 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 5, 3. Yeah, fantastic. Let's keep going, folks. Next up, we have another one of those F chords with our little finger or our 3rd finger on that high C note, and we ping that and rest there for a little while. Off on again for flyer, fly, resolve to the C5 chord again. Notice at the start of measure 25, that's the 2nd measure of the bottom line, the melody starts to climb up. We have this. Okay. So just watch that. We've got 2 fingers down. We can, at the start of measure 25, we can hit this G note 3rd fret of the E string and strum. Then we lift off whichever finger we have on the A string and strum. Put it back down. Now here we pick once at 3 and then extend very quickly out to 5, so we get that high D note. Okay, so from measure 25, really slowly, it'll sound like this. 3, off, 3, 3, 5. That can take a bit of practice. Let's try that together. 1 and 2 and off, on, up. Yeah, you've got that. You'll get that with practice. Take it slowly, you'll get that. Then we move up to the 7th fret, back to 5, 7, 8, back to 7 and rest. We stay there for a while. Then finally, 5th fret, again use that 3rd finger because you can swoop back to the G7, and then we move up to another C5 to resolve. Fantastic. Let's try putting the whole piece together now, really, really slowly, slow tempo. And I'll kind of say the bits as we play them, going really slowly, and you can have a go with me. So get your little finger on the 7th fret, right from the top now. 1 and 2 and 7, 3, 7, 5, 7, 8, 7, 5, F shape, 3, 3, 3, off, 3, C5 chord. Now measure 9 7s again, 7, 3, 3, 3, 7, 5, 7, 8, 7, rest there. 5, G7, C5 chord. Okay. Now our double bar lines, we go right up to 10. 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 8, 10, 7, 5, 3. F chord with C added, 3, off 3, C5 chords. Bottom line now, here it starts. 3, off, 3, 3, 5, 7, 5, 7, 8, 7. Stay there. 7, 7, 7, 5, G7, and that's C. Well done, guys. Now don't worry if you didn't get that first time, you can always slow that down, do it at your own pace, one measure at a time, make sure you're really comfortable. I always say if you're making mistakes, and I include myself in this as well, it's because you're going too fast. Most of the times when we make mistakes on our ukulele, it's because we're trying to do something with our fingers and our mind isn't quite there yet, so we become anxious and we hit the wrong notes. So if you find you're still messing up in certain sections or all of it, just slow it right down to its very basics. Get it right at a kind of crazy slow tempo and then gradually bring it up and you'll be good to go. Now you'll notice in the demo video at the start, I did another run through where I was doing a kind of clawhammer style way of playing, just to add an even extra kind of layer of intricacy over the top. I'm actually doing a version of clawhammer using up-picking, which is something that Pete Seeger used to do back in the day. And it's actually my favourite way of playing clawhammer because it's slightly less aggressive and I think it matches the tone of the uke beautifully. Now I'll show you how to do it, and I'll show you how to do kind of full clawhammer style if you like as well, so you can put it into the music. And then you can have an experiment with putting these kind of clawhammer style little kind of drills in where you feel are kind of necessary in the music. Now, if we think about what we're doing so far, is we're doing two things, as I mentioned at the start of the video, where we're doing an up pick followed by a downstroke. In essence, that's the main part of the whole kind of procedure, isn't it? Up pick, down strum. Now that's a two-part movement. The thing that makes clawhammer so cool and so nice, but also a bit tricky to do, is we have a three-part movement in the same timing. So now instead of just up picking and down strumming, after the down strum, I'm going to touch the G string with my thumb. This works on high G or low G. I prefer the sound of high G because you have that higher pitched tap here, but you can do it on either, and you'll find arrangements of this style with both in the book later on. Now, to do this, I like to kind of say a phrase to keep the timing perfect. And some people say bum ditty, bum ditty, bum ditty. Other people say tick-tocker, tick-tocker, tick-tocker. I quite like clawhammer, clawhammer, clawhammer. But notice that first part is slightly longer than the next two. The next two basically fill up the same amount of time, but twice as quick. So let's have a look at what's happening. We up pick with, I like to use my index finger, but any nail will do. Then we come down. Now the important thing here is as you come down, leave this thumb sticking up as if you're hitching a lift. It's so important in all of Clawhammer and this picking style. If the thumb is down here as you come down, you've got to add an extra movement in to get it back up again. So I pick up, down with the nails, and my thumb is just resting on that G string, ready to pick out, okay? So in effect, we're going up, down, thumb out, tick, tock, or bum, ditty, or claw, hammer. And what I want you to do is just practice that round and round. You could even stop the video, pause it for a minute, and just practice it lots and lots. It will sound something like this at slow tempo. Notice I've got an up and down, and then an out, not another down, an out. Up, down, out, up, down, out. Good. Start that slow. When you think you've got that, just start to speed it up. Keeping that really nice consistency of timing. If you feel you've got that, try going crazy fast. See how fast you can get that. Now, when you've got that, when you're ready to come back, what we do is we place that clawhammer style pick anytime we've got the melody note followed by a chord, but only where the melody doesn't change super quick. So on the first section, it would sound something like this. We would hit that 7th fret of the A string and follow it with our ditty, bum, ditty. We would do the same at the 3rd fret, bum, ditty. Same on this G note on the E string, bum, ditty. And then we go back to that C note again. It would sound something like this. Claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer. So we've added another layer of intricacy. Basically we're playing triplets, 3 notes for every beat. And the reason I love this up pick style is it keeps it really neat and soft, doesn't it? Because the only difference to what we're already doing is now we're hitting that G string of our thumb. It's that simple. Okay. Now, if you wanted to try this traditional clawhammer, just so you've had a go at it, the only difference between traditional clawhammer and this up picking style, which I really like, is that the first note, the bum of your bum ditty, instead of doing an up pick, you would actually use the nail of your index finger coming down into the string. So you would pick using the nail side of that index finger coming in towards the uke like this. And then the next bit the same as before. That's your traditional clawhammer. That would sound something like this. Sorry, I'll do that again. See that? Now, either way works perfectly well with this song, so you could experiment with both. I just like the softness and the simplicity of the up pick. So have an experiment and see what suits you. Now, this up pick, this kind of clawhammer pick, it doesn't work where the melody moves fast onto the offbeats as well. So after the first 2 measures, where we might put it in, because the melody is moving quickly, we haven't got time to do the clawhammer, so the next bit you would just keep as was. Okay, you would keep that melody just as it was, But any time that you have a note resting for a beat, you can put the clawhammer style back in. For instance here. Okay, so just have an experiment with where you put that clawhammer in. Wherever the melody is moving quickly, leave it out. Where it rests for a beat, put it in. I'll give you an example. You can play along or just have a listen. The first line would sound something like this. Claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer. Just melody. Claw, hammer, claw, hammer. I can do it on the F chord as well. Claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer. Just melody. Claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer, claw, hammer. Okay, and you just repeat that process for the whole thing and you get this really extra kind of beautiful, kind of intricate sounding way of picking. Now you notice I did a couple of extra things, so we can take it, believe it or not, right? We've gone from one note per beat to 2 notes in the original way of picking. Then we've gone to 3 notes with this clawhammer picking. Now we can add a 4th note in per beat by doing this kind of cool hammer-on trick. And you'll notice if you watch the demo video that I'll sometimes do this when we go to that C5 chord where things rest, like the final measure of the first line. So what I do is rather than just up picking and doing my clawhammer, if you want to have a go at it, what I do is I'll actually pick the E string open first. So the first note of the last measure of the first line, rather than hitting a G note, the 3rd fret of the E string, and claw hammering, I'll actually do a hammer on onto that 3rd fret. So I'll hit it open. Now you have to use a decent amount of force with this finger to get that hammer on to ring clear. And then I follow it with the ditty, my little claw hammer bit. See that? And you can do that on any of the notes in this C5 chord. You could do it on the A string. Isn't that lovely? That will take a lot of time and a lot of practice, but have a little experiment with that. So if I go from the measures with the F so you can hear how that would sound, it would be something like this. Just have an experiment with that. It's a way of adding yet another note. Now that might be too much for some people and that's absolutely fine. But if you can get that into your playing, you can start sounding really, really great. This technique is used a lot by James Hill when he does his kind of country-esque way of playing. He'll quite often add these quadruplets, if you like, the clawhammer triplet with that added hammer on. Sometimes I like to do that hammer on a note up the fretboard. Now you'll notice before we come to that G7 on the penultimate measure of the 2nd line, where we get that G7, the 0, 2, 1, 2. I'll quite often, when I'm on these 7s, I'll quite often put my index finger back on the 5th fret and I'll hammer on to that 7. And that creates another texture later on in the piece. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, just to finish off before the conclusion, is I'm going to play the whole thing through with some hammer-ons. Now, I don't want you to be too prescriptive about this because it's such a tricky technique. The best thing is to experiment with putting those hammer-ons and the claw hammer wherever you feel that you can squeeze it in. Don't overphase yourself. But I'm going to play it just as I did in the demo, but like super slow motion, so you can watch what I'm doing and get some ideas. And then we'll just finish off with a little conclusion after that. So from the start, I'm going to go from this 7th fret. 1 and 2 and Well, I hope you enjoyed that and you picked up some really exciting new techniques. I remember when I first learnt this technique for the first time, I was like so excited because it's such a cool way of playing. And people love to listen to it because it kind of tricks the ears in thinking maybe there's like 2 or 3 ukuleles playing at the same time. I do it in lots of pieces. That's a bit of Wildwood Flower that I like to play with it in. And later on we're going to put it into a few pieces from the book. That's a bit of Cider with Rosie. Don't worry, we're going to slow it down and play it a lot slower than that. So loads and loads of exciting ways to practice this later on. Well, I hope you enjoyed that anyway. As I say, I've had loads of fun teaching that one. If you have any questions with that, you can send me an email and let me know and I'll do my best to help you. And we'll get loads of chances to practice this with pieces later on in the course. Take it slow, enjoy it, and have heaps and heaps of fun, everyone. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. You can. Bye.